Yeah, I think this one is Megacalibia platyphylla, formerly Megacalibia rodmanii. It used to be Trichlomopsis platyphylla. The platyful mushroom is the common name for it. It'll be growing out of rotting wood, and this is one that's listed as edible, and I haven't eaten it. There's a lot of mushrooms like that where they're listed as edible, and I just haven't had like a real thorough introduction. You know, I think of mushrooms a lot of the same way that I think of people. There's some that just stick out to me, and I'm like, yeah, I want to hang out with you. You're so cool, dude. And then other ones that I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool, but you know, I don't really have time for you right now, and you know, maybe we can hang out another time. And then once you really get to know them, then you're like, oh, you're so awesome. I wish I had hung out with you sooner, but whatever. You know?
How do you cook your mushrooms? Give me some of your favorite ways to do mushrooms.
My favorite, like the most simple way I like to do mushrooms the first time I try them is just chopped up into little pieces and then pan fried in sunflower oil with a pinch of salt. Because then you get to know the real flavor profile of the mushroom itself. Then beyond that, I like to saute them until they get pretty crispy, and then towards like the last couple minutes I sprinkle dulse flakes on there, seaweed flakes, and then they get even more crispy. And then when they're starting to stick to the bottom of the pan, I get a little bit of tamari, which is basically a fermented soy sauce, and it's got a little bit of alcohol in it, so that alcohol deglazes the caramelized mushrooms off the bottom of the pot. And so I sprinkle that on, I move it off of the heat, and I scrape and stir really fast to it like dissolves and bubbles up, and like you swirl it around and it turns into this kind of sticky light coating over all of the mushrooms, and all that sweetness blends into the flavor of the mushrooms. And also when you're using tamari, so mushrooms, tamari, and seaweed are all great sources of glutamic acid. And glutamic acid is where we get monosodium glutamate from, that salt that makes Chinese food taste like you want to eat it every day for the rest of your life. But it's like supposedly not that good for you, and I don't really like the chemically processed versions. But I think that part of the reason that our bodies crave that flavor is because one of the most powerful endogenous or internally produced antioxidants in our body is glutathione, and glutamic acid is the protein or the amino acid precursor for that glutathione production. So we crave it so that our body can produce more of that antioxidant. So mixing all three of those, the seaweed, the tamari, and the mushrooms, brings in three different sources of that kind of savory umami flavor that is like so incredible. So that's one way I like to do them. And then with various other mushrooms, like shrimp of the woods, lion's mane mushroom, oyster mushrooms, all three of those I'll use to make crab cakes. A lot of mushrooms are really good for making jerky, like honey mushrooms and maitake mushrooms. I boil them down, then marinate them in a mix of like tamari and citrus juice as the base, and then whatever seasonings you want to include in there, like garlic or whatever herbs you've got, salt, pepper, turmeric, onions, ginger. Marinate it for a few days in the refrigerator, and then put it in the dehydrator at 160 and slice it real thin. It comes out tasting like just like jerky snacks. They're really good. So that's a good way to do it. There's a few little tricks to it, but